Good afternoon. It's a new financial service consulting company. How can I help you?
Hi, my name is Ollie. I'm having a problem right now. I don't have a job and I only have $20,000 in my savings. Do you think it's possible if I become an Uber driver with that amount of money? And would that be a sustainable living?
Yeah, definitely. We can definitely run or analyze the data and also provide you the recommendation. We just need further information regarding your personal expense and also your any other information related to that. Would it be possible if you can send an email to us and
Oh,
then I will
yes,
pass it
yes.
to the analyst. Yep, and we will able to reach out to you in a week time.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
1 week later.
Hi, Ollie. How are you?
Hi, how are you doing?
Good to see you again. And we would like to actually start off by thanking you for choosing our ANU financial consultant service.
No
And
worries.
without any further ado, I would like to actually introduce my data analyst, Nathaniel Joshua Sibal.
Nice to finally meet you, Mr. Ollie.
Nice to meet you too.
So
All
now
right.
I would like to share the screen and start on with our presentation,
Yeah.
and Oyanga will introduce.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to start off the business problem. So basically, our client Ollie is considering getting a car loan to buy a Toyota Corolla as an investment to become an Uber driver. He currently has 20,000 savings, which is willing to pay the 10,000 for the deposit. And we are considering in our model basically all the fluctuation variables such as inflation rate, interest rate, any other price volatility, and other variables. So we looked at the official website of Toyota Corolla, and the price is pretty much the 27,500 according to their official website. And this amount has to be repaid in 4 years' time. We're considering the interest and any other variables. Now I would like to pass it on to my data analyst to further explain.
So we also researched on the possible income of an Uber driver, and according to Sir Kelly in 2020, the typical income is 1,150 for an Uber driver. Next, we also researched on the different car expenses. This is petrol prices, and which will be also be based on the historical volatility of crude oil, and the toll prices in Australia, which is 84.6% in Sydney, roadside assistance, which is 2.8 per week, servicing entire cost, which is 29.41 per week for a two-car household, and we divide it into two. Second is registration CTP and license cost, which is 29.53 per week for major cities in Australia. Comprehensive insurance cost is priced at an average of 24.87 per week for a two-car household, and we divide it into two. Next is the loan payment of $19 per week, and you will be paying this for 4 years. And in Australia, there's a depreciation cost or depreciation rate of a car is after 4 years, the value of your car will be 49% of its original value. Next is the client's rent, which is 270 per week. And this is according to GQ 2020 and also from the email that you have given us. Next is the client's internet and mobile expenses, which is $15 per week. Electricity bill, which is 37.5 per week. Gas bill, which is 18.83. Grocery expenses, which is 122.0 per week. And lastly, the leisure expenses of Mr. Ollie, according to your email, is $123 per week. And now we'll be continuing and explaining the model. First is the Uber income that we have research on. It's $1,150 per week, and the upper and lower limit for this is 4% and negative 4% according to the research that we also have conducted. And as you have mentioned, you have a $20,000 in your savings and you wanted to pay for your car loan deposit of 10,000, which makes your savings at the end of this 10,000. Next would be your car expenses. For your car expenses, for your loan, the upper and lower limit would be 10% and 2.99%. This is according to the research that we have conducted in the loan prices here in Sydney, Australia. Next would be petrol prices, which is the upper limit would be 16% and the lower limit would be 36.2%. And that's because it is directly affected by the crude oil's volatility. Next would be road assistance, servicing, tire, registration, and comprehensive insurance cost, which are all affected by inflation rate, which is 1.74 according to recent statistics. Next would be the car dollar value, which is at your buying point would be 27,500 Australian dollars, and the upper limit and lower limit of this car will go down is 18% or 12%. So it's in between 12 to 18%. And we also calculated the depreciation through this. So it's just basically subtracting the amount of the value of the car in the first year from the initial value. Next would be the personal expenses, and we believe that all of these expenses have an upper limit of the inflation rate and 0%. Next would be the part where Oyanga will explain.
Okay, so our after considering all the expenses, we basically deduct expenses from the income, which brings shows us the gross profit, and then we also consider the tax expense. So tax expense is currently at 30%. So we basically deduct it from the gross profit, which brings it down to our net profit. And then after net profit, we will add the depreciation expense back. The reason being is because non-cash expense, it's non-cash expense. And that way we will have the net cash flow. And after having net cash flow, we will calculate the return on investment, which we will do it by calculating the gross profit over initial investment, which is 27,500. And then after that, based on that, we will calculate the accumulation factor and accumulation factor, which brings it down to our present value of net cash flow. Now I will continue on explaining further to our simulation. But before we move on, I'd like to explain that we've actually run the two types of trials. So first one, we calculated the 50,000 simulations for one trial. We also tried simulating 10,000 simulations for 5 trials in order to compare the result. So here we go. I'm going to explain you based on the 50,000 trial first. So as you can see in summary statistics part, we finally were able to find out the mean of the revenue of your investment. So it will be around, the mean is 19,620. And we also have standard deviation. So standard deviation is basically the measure of how spread out the numbers are. So if the data points are further from the mean, there's a higher deviation within the data set. And the higher the standard deviation, the worse. So basically, we have pretty good standard deviation numbers. We also have median and count, which is 50,000 simulation numbers. Standard error as well. So standard error is basically tells you how accurate the mean of any given sample from that population and how likely is it to be compared to the true population mean. So the lower the standard error, the better. And we also need to optimize the resource and time to optimize to lower the standard error. And skewness. So skewness is basically measures the symmetry of the data set. So if the skewness is between minus 0.5 and 0.5, that means the data are fairly symmetrical. So in our case, it's within the range, which is good. And kurtosis, it measures the tail of the data. So if it's heavy tailed, it means it has more outliers. If it's light tailed, it means it's lacking in outliers. So in case, if it's less than 0, that pretty much means that the distribution is towards more light tails. But the values between the -2 and the +2 are considered pretty much acceptable in order to prove normal distribution, which in our case is still within the range. And maximum and minimum, as you can guess, the maximum and the smallest revenue.
Mm.
Now we move on to confidence interval. So now it's very important to, after we complete our model, we also run the confidence interval. So basically what confidence interval means is that, for example, for 95% confidence interval, this means you are 95% certain that most of these samples contain the true population parameter. And it also
Uh,
the range in which you're confident of your estimate and conclusion. Yeah,
so
do you have?
yes, so why are there two confidence intervals? Could you like repeat that again?
Yeah, sure. So the reason why we calculated both 95 and 99, it's basically 95% confidence interval is more realistic to the real world data, because 99 is more to show you how it would look like in ideal world. But in order for us to be more realistic, we are in our case considering the more emphasize focusing more on the 95% confidence interval. And like I said, it's basically shows the range in which you can be confident of your estimates and hence make a conclusion out of it. Okay, and now our data analyst Joshua will continue on, yeah, diving more into this confidence
Yep.
interval.
Thank you very much. So now I'll be talking about the level. First is 95% confidence, which has a z-score of 1.96. It's always constant. And for 99% level, it would be 2.57, 2.576 confidence
Mm.
for the z-score. And for the margin of error represents a statistic expression of the random sampling error in the results of the simulation. The larger the margin of error, the less confident one should be to expect the result of the simulation to likely happen in real life. So to just explain it in simple terms, you want this number for the margin of error to be as low as possible. Next is uh, the upper bound and lower bound. The upper bound is only calculated by adding the margin of error to the mean, and the lower bound is subtracting the margin of error to the mean. Next would be the width of the CI, or the confidence interval, which could be computed by the difference between the upper bound and the lower bound. The importance of the confidence interval, the width of it, is because it has direct relationship with other factors such as the mean. With the width of confidence of interval decreasing, the sample size increases. Next would be the width increases, the deviation increases, and lastly, the width increases as the confidence level also increases. Next would be the percentage of the width of CI in respect or in regards to the mean, which is 0.132%. The importance when calculating the percentage is having a lower than 1% says that the margin of error for the simulation has less than 1% of happening. This way, we can ensure that the standard of error is sufficiently low and our confidence interval of estimates is also sufficiently narrow. Moving on is the frequency histogram. As you can see, there's a column called bin. Bin is just a representation of different ranges from 11,000 to 10 from 10,000 to 11,000 and so on until 24,001 until 25,000. And on the right column is the frequency of these numbers or these range in the data that we have, these numbers in appearing in these bins or the ranges. As you can see, majority of the frequency is happening towards the 20,000 and 20,000 mark, which shows great uh, income for you in the next 4 years. As you can see, this is the histogram that we have produced, and there's a majority of the number. Next would be I'll be sharing the other uh, simulations that we have done, which is the 10,000 simulations doing it 5 times. As you can see, the numbers are the same. The car expenses, personal expenses, etc. The only difference is obviously the estimated value of your revenue. Do you have any questions, Mr. Ollie, or
Uh,
can I?
yeah, you can just continue.
So for this, we also calculated the different summary statistics and confidence interval of the trials by doing it on the respective sheets. As you can see, different trials have different numbers and different means, as well as different histogram. But the trend that we have found out is that there is a good amount that your income would probably be around the 20,000 and 21,000 mark, because our histogram shows that there is a frequency in these numbers. And summary would be the average of these 5 trials. So you can see over here, and the summary of confidence interval. If you have any questions, you can also email us, or you can ask your questions right now. But if you don't have, I can continue on in the recommendation aspect of our model.
Yes.
First recommendation would be to use specific numbers for the car expenses. So it would depend on what kind of petrol do you use or what kind of expenses would you want to be put into your car and your personal expenses as well. Aside from that, I believe that the model that we have created is in your best interest and produces a good amount of value. And the simulation also shows that we are very confident in this model and we think that it produces a real life scenario. If you don't have any questions, you can just email and reach out to NU Financial Services and we'll come to your need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.